Thank you all for the introduction. I'm going to walk down here so I can actually see the slide deck here. So a little bit about myself. My name is Jared. I'm the founder of the DigiByte blockchain. I have been in this industry for going on 7 years now. I've done a little bit of everything from building wallets to building a blockchain to building exchanges and building commercial products on top of that. So kind of across the gamut. One of the things, I think I did my first presentation and speech on blockchain in like 2014. So one of the things I like to do is kind of gauge the audience and see, you know, where everybody's at. So obviously I'm assuming the majority of people in the room right now, by a show of hands, have heard the term blockchain before. Is there anybody completely new? Okay, cool. Now how many people feel comfortable describing what a blockchain is to somebody new on the street? Okay, a few more hands go down. How many people are comfortable explaining what a Merkle tree data structure is? Okay, all right, there we go. Okay, so just kind of gauging the audience. So I was just at MIT not too long ago and they grilled me on technical stuff. So just kind of gauging it. So the title of my presentation is Blockchain 2035, which is also the upcoming book, hoping to have out by the end of this year, talking about the entire industry and what it's going to be like in the year 2035 when blockchain technology is integrated throughout almost every aspect of our everyday life. So to start off with, oh, and it's also the year that the very last DigiByte will be minted, and I'll get into that in a little bit, but that's kind of the story behind the title there. So, you know, not too long ago, how many people in here are a fan of, what's the show on Netflix about nature? Planet Earth. Planet Earth 2 just came out. So I was sitting there watching it one day, and I was like, wait a minute. There's so much that parallels in nature with what we're doing in the blockchain world. So one of the things that I like to describe is imagine all the DNA in your own body, all the DNA strands. You have millions of them, right? They're all throughout, every cell in your body. Well, what happens if all the DNA in your body was just located in your fingertip? And you were making some cocktails one night, you were cutting some limes, and you slipped, and you cut your finger off. Well, there'd be a problem, right? Your body would wither and die within days. You couldn't have children. Well, if you really think about it, that is how the internet functions today. We have these centralized services that are completely located in a single point of failure. Well, how do we get around that? Well, that's basically where blockchain technology comes in. So I like to say blockchain technology and applied blockchain technology is a paradigm shift in the way we handle data, and it's a paradigm shift in computer science in general. So the exciting thing is nature figured out how to take important information and decentralize it a millennia ago. So when you look at this picture up here, you see all these instances and all these cases where you have trees that have seeds, you have flowers, you have all sorts of stuff that have spores where they take identical information and they replicate it far and wide, right? You take a dandelion, identical spores of information put out there in a decentralized way, just like the DNA in your body. And that's kind of how a blockchain is functioning. A mushroom will emit millions of identical spores. So just like the nodes on the DigiByte network or the nodes on a Bitcoin network. So as you can see, if we kind of begin mimicking with our data systems, you know, what nature figured out a long time ago, I think we're on the right track. So this is my main argument for why this technology is going to be in every aspect of our life by the year 2035. So let me talk about DigiByte. So going back to, let's see, I first started out as a Bitcoin miner in 2012, moved into 2013, and the first ASIC started hitting the market. And I'm like, okay, there's gonna be a problem here. There's gonna be a heavy centralization of the mining activity. It's basically an arms race, right? So starting out after I spent the majority of 2013 going through the Bitcoin code, well, 2012, 2013, I had some ideas for how we could improve the Bitcoin core protocol. And so I made some suggestions on some forums, and it just kind of fell on deaf ears. So I'm like, you know what? What if we go test this in an actual blockchain, see if it works, and we can kind of take it to the next level. But one of the things that stood out to me as I started going through all the different, modules, different functions, different areas of the Bitcoin core protocol, was that this was a massive innovation basically in cryptography. So for those of you that don't know what a Genesis block is, that's basically a news headline of the title. It's the very first block in a blockchain. So Bitcoin in 2009, Satoshi chose the headline, was it Chancellor Banks on the brink of failure? Well, I decided to use the headline, Target 110 million customers' data stolen, because my vision, and at the time, was this technology can fix 95% of today's cybersecurity vulnerabilities. And so that's kind of the theme of the book that we're working on, is how that will actually be carried out and how that will be implemented by the year 2035. So that's kind of been our driving force and our vision with DigiByte, over the last almost 5 years now. So as I said, DigiByte was launched on January 10th, 2014. We had a countdown ticker. We launched it, basically right on time, to the minute. Within just a few minutes, there was almost like 300 installs and pulls from GitHub. So we had a very fair, very decentralized launch, which is one of the reasons, I don't know if you've seen us on Twitter, but there's just a massive amount of people from all over the world. We have a very energetic community. But since then, we have done a series of innovations, advancements, and improvements, some of which are actually became industry standard. So one of the things we did was DigiShield, which is a real-time difficulty adjustment. I don't want to get too much into it because it gets kind of technical. But long story short, it's used by probably, 40, 50 other projects now. In fact, when Bitcoin Cash forked from Bitcoin, they were having trouble with their blocks. We're delayed, hours between blocks. They actually forked directly from our repository to fix that. So Zcash, Ethereum's actually included it. That was one of our early innovations. The next thing we did is we actually forked from a single mining algorithm to 5 in an effort to further decentralize the network and the system. I'll get into that a little bit more here in a little bit. Then we continued to speed up the network, which is why currently DigiByte is 40 times faster than Bitcoin. We have blocks every 15 seconds. Each individual mining algorithm actually occurs every minute and 30 seconds. So with that, we can actually do some pretty unique and innovative stuff that's not possible with a single mining algorithm. And at the moment, we're actually working on some potential innovations where each mining algorithm will actually recreate itself every 10 minutes, or every 10 days, so you can't actually create ASICs for it to further decentralize the system. So there's some exciting stuff going on. And once again, DigiByte was not an ICO. There is no company behind it. It's completely community-based, volunteer-driven, and we literally have hundreds, thousands of people helping to further DigiByte every day across the planet. So pretty exciting. And then later on in 2017, we actually activated SegWit before Litecoin, Bitcoin, or any of the other major projects did. So that's another time. And then since then, we've actually made several improvements this year. I don't want to bore you with technical details, but because DigiByte is the longest major public blockchain in the world today, because we have 15-second blocks, we've actually encountered some problems that we've had to fix that Bitcoin won't even encounter for like another 100 years. So kind of interesting, especially when it comes to mobile wallets, synchronization with full SPV nodes, yada, yada, yada. So it's been fun. So here's a quick overview. Currently our network, we can handle about 560 transactions per second. We have some things that'll continue to scale that. There'll be 21 billion digibytes. The last one will be minted in the year 2035. So we chose that because Bitcoin has 21 million, so it's a 1 to 1,000 ratio. Once again, going back to, kind of one of our biggest innovations is real-time difficulty adjustment, which is actually still a pretty big bug in Bitcoin that could actually, do a lot of damage one day. So, one of the ways, I know a lot of people coming into this industry, they go to coinmarketcap.com and they just basically take like the top 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 projects, right? Well, it's not really the best way of looking at it. So we're actually working on an updated version of this diagram, but the way I like to explain it to people is imagine a tree. And that big trunk is the original Bitcoin protocol, right? That's like the one that's been worked on for the longest time. And then from that, you have all these other branches that are, just kind of branching out with these different concepts, these different ideas, like proof of stake, the Ethereum virtual machine model. And then on top of those, you have, ICOs, and it's kind of been like the wild, wild west. But like I said, this is a few months, well, it's about 10 months old now, but that's kind of where DigiByte fits in the ecosystem. So going back to what makes DigiByte unique, going back to our multi-algorithm mining, so we have 5 independent mining algorithms that basically synchronize themselves in real time. So each algorithm gets about 20% of the blocks, which helps us further decentralize mining. So 20% is Qubit, 20% Script, 20% SHA-256, 20% Grossel, 20% Skeen. So these are cryptographic algorithms. So don't want to lose everybody. So this is every month there's about 1% less DigiBytes coming into circulation. And like I said, the last DigiByte will be minted in the year 2035. Currently, I think, what are we? We're about 10 billion. So I don't even think we're 50% of the way there yet. So like I said, with DigiByte, we started at 0. So, it's truly one of the most decentralized real-world blockchains in the world today. You can actually see the statistics on our GitHub repository. We've had, at this point, over 250,000 installations of our full node. And for those that don't know what a node is, it's basically a server, a computer, a laptop that's basically has an entire version of the blockchain. So, and the cool part about this, going back to that nature example, is it really only takes 2 of them in a basement to keep the whole thing going. So, that's the beauty of a truly decentralized system is there is no company, there is no organization. It's just it's mathematical cryptographic code. And that's, what we believe the future is by the year 2035. One of the examples and clarifications that I've recently, especially with this explosion of tokens and everything, and by the way, on the side note, like we really hate it when people call DigiByte a token because it was not launched on Ethereum, which I kind of feel has been, mixed in there. It's its own unique blockchain, but a lot of times when people go to CoinMarketCap, they see these projects, they don't realize that they're not actual blockchains. They're issued either on Ethereum, potentially BitShares, or one of these other services. And it's not, a truly decentralized system. So how do we explain how you can build stuff? Because we're in the process, a fair amount of stuff has actually been built on top of DigiByte. I like to describe it as like an Oreo, right? So at the very base layer, effectively a decentralized blockchain that's, can potentially connect to 250,000 points on the planet is a very efficient communications network. And it's one of the most underutilized aspects that I don't really see many developers using. You have the potential to build messaging services and a lot of decentralized systems that, people just aren't even really exploring that much yet. Now, how do you incentivize people to run those nodes? Well, you got to have some sort of digital asset, and that's where that middle layer, and this analogy can work with Bitcoin as well too. Once you have that incentive, the Bitcoin or the DigiBytes, that's how people run it, and then once you have that, you can start building some really cool stuff on top of this. So going back to that analogy I started with, having all your DNA in your fingertip, once you have a network, basically we're talking the entire internet that's been rebuilt from the ground up, you can start doing some very cool stuff to mitigate the majority of today's cybersecurity vulnerabilities. So that's kind of one of the things we're focused on. So it goes a little bit more into detail. So, when you send a transaction, now this diagram can also be applied to Bitcoin as well too, but the problem with the Bitcoin blockchain is it's basically full, right? And that's where we've been able to do some things to significantly increase scalability to get around some of these issues. So when you send a transaction, a lot of people think of it as just money, but the important thing you're able to do from that point is you can handle documents, messaging, music, artwork, you name it. One of the things I spent 3 years in Hong Kong doing was developing a platform that today is actually securing hundreds of millions of dollars of international trade shipments. And all we were doing was securing the documents and basically using public and private keys to authenticate who was actually signing contracts, completely outside of a financial application. So that's one of the things we're focused on continuing doing. So Very exciting things. We're in the process of doing something that we're calling DigiAssets that will allow other companies and other organizations to actually begin building on top of DigiByte. So this has actually been in the work for almost 2 years now. We actually started testing it out about a year ago. This is actually the first time it's ever been publicly mentioned. We're not quite ready to launch it yet, but we will be. But this is basically going to be an open source platform with documentation, because we get hit up all the time. Hey, we know you got this scalable blockchain. How can we build on top of it? So we're trying to make it as easy as possible. One of the ways that I personally am using this is I've been involved with a startup for about 10 months now. That we're actually going to take, well, I guess it's on the next slide, but one of the things about DigiByte, we have a very, very enthusiastic audience. I don't know if you get on social media and Twitter, sometimes it's kind of like an army, but there are a lot of cool people. So we'd like to, on behalf of the community, warmly welcome everyone here. If this is the first time you've heard about DigiByte, to come check us out. DigiByte.io. There's Telegram chats, social media groups, and literally people, all over the world. So, but what I'm currently working on, I don't want to get too much into it, but I'm actually bringing all the information and knowledge that we've acquired over the last 7 years, basically to real estate and helping to fix the housing problem here in the United States. So I'm not going to go any more detail on that because we're not really ready for a public launch, but I figured since it's in Austin and this is our headquarters, I kind of wanted to reveal it here. So with that, that's kind of my presentation. So I don't know if anybody has any questions. Yes.
My name is Raj Lakhani. 2 questions actually. So one is that, so basically I will ask in very layman's terms, okay? So you said that you can produce a block every 15 seconds, which is much faster than Bitcoin and all that. But if you have the last block in 2035, so in a way, can I not compare it to like a car which can drive, 200 miles per hour? But you are trying to drive it only, say, 20 miles per hour.
Okay, so I see your exact question here. So this is a question that comes up with Bitcoin, Litecoin, DigiByte, etc., right? So when I say the last DigiByte is minted, that doesn't mean the last block is produced. So the blockchain continues on. Now what happens is all the transactions have something called a mining fee that's associated with that, a transaction fee, right? Those fees continue going to miners and they continue paying for the security of the network. And we actually tested this in 2015. We're like, what happens when the reward goes to 0? And we actually ran through a full simulation. We actually basically recreated DigiByte amongst the developers and literally ran it to 0. Like we changed some of the parameters. It continues on just fine, just like Bitcoin will do in the year 2144. We did, however, make the assumption that the value would at least be enough incentive for miners because of the transaction fees to continue the network. So yeah, no, the blockchain doesn't stop. But another funny, interesting note that a lot of people aren't aware of is every blockchain out there actually dies in the year 2039. I think it's 2039 because of the way time is actually recorded. So I'm sure we'll have it figured out by then, but it's something a lot of people don't really know.
Thank you.
And actually every computer system on the planet at the moment. So
my second question was answered in the first one actually.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
When you're making some announcements, I heard that you're making an upgrade with the proof of work that it makes it ASIC proof. I heard that, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, so
I'm really curious about that.
Going back, this whole concept of ASIC proof is it's kind of a misnomer, right? Because a lot of the cryptographic algorithms that were actually used in a lot of the different systems, including SHA-256, KEKIC, some of these other things. There's an organization called NIST. How many people know what NIST is? National Institute for Standards and Technology, right? Well, they're the ones that actually set the parameters for how basically cryptographic information is held, how top secret information is classified. But one of the requirements for developing these algorithms is they have to be ASIC pro or positive. So a lot of these algorithms that have been used in different cryptocurrencies that were advertised as being ASIC proof were actually designed for ASICs. So it's kind of a misnomer. So, we were talking last year, there was a lot of talk in our community. We were actually going to hard fork a couple of the algorithms that are now, basically at this point, there are ASICs on all 5 DigiByte algorithms. In fact, there's actually, I don't want to mention names or details, but there were certain parts of the planet that specifically designed them in secret, for DigiByte. So globally, we are dominated three of the hash. So Qubit, Grossel, in skiing, globally, we have the largest hash rate of any of the other blockchains out there. And then the other 2 are script in SHA-256. So what we're actually working on and exploring is a very innovative cryptographic algorithm that basically recreates itself every 10 days on the network. And the idea is, if you alternate that among 5, every few days, and so basically you're able to allow GPU miners, you have to rediscover it. It's kind of like every 10 days you got to reconfigure your miner setup. So it makes it impossible to actually design ASICs. So we don't have any timeline, we don't have any date. We're testing it, exploring it, but it's one of those things, we are getting a lot of heat in the community, like, hey, you guys are trying to be ASIC resistant. But that's one of the things we're exploring. So, but before we could ever do something like that, it's going to take 6 months or longer to actually carry out a hard fork. Plus, we got to test it and make sure it works, because when you're dealing with $250 million, people tend to get upset when you lose their money. So,
Thank you.
yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely. MIT license. Yeah.
So let me ask you a question about nodes. So right now, Bitcoin's 560 gig, Ethereum node is maybe a terabyte, and they're growing probably 10% every few months. Where's kind of the community at on compensating node hosting for where all these blockchain copies are going to go?
Well, okay, so one of the things that I've seen with a lot of, to me it's an architecture and a design problem, right? There's this notion in the blockchain space that you have to put all this data on a blockchain. One of the most underutilized things is just the fact that you're truly decentralizing the cryptographic keys in a wallet. So there's a gentleman named Ralph Merkle, who actually is the one that created public and private key cryptography and also the Merkle data tree in a blockchain. He himself said in an interview just not too long ago, it's on the internet, it's a great interview, I'd recommend everybody go check it out, but it probably only has like a couple thousand views. He's like, the problem I've been trying to solve after the advent of public-private key cryptography, if I'm here and I'm basically trying to securely communicate with you and you're the other part of the planet, we have to exchange keys first, right? So he's been looking for a method to decentralize that distribution of private keys in a secure way, and that's basically what a blockchain does. So, one of the things we talk about in the book is you take, blockchain, AI, and IoT are going to merge, and that's what's going to create the future in 2035. When you have sensors, individual physical devices that basically are cryptographically linked to a blockchain, the same way your private keys authorize a transaction, but they can authorize data, they can authorize messaging, they can do a lot of cool stuff. And this is how you can secure the data feeds, because one of the problems with AI is how do you know the data you're getting is legit? How do you know it's from where you say it is? Because another point, which I didn't really get into because I know we didn't have much time, is timekeeping. The history of timekeeping, we go into the book, and why a blockchain is kind of the first time in human history you have the ability to prove something happened at a specific point in time. So going back to your question, the architecture of how you leverage a blockchain, I feel like has been completely underutilized. There's a lot of these systems that have been architected that could be architected way more efficient in a way that they don't have to bloat the chain with all this unnecessary data. So that's one of the emphasis we're doing with DigiAssets is to teach people, hey, you don't have to send all this data and all these different things when you can use cryptography in some very unique ways to do it without bloating and unnecessarily doing stuff. So hope that answers the question. This gentleman right here.
Okay, so you have a great blockchain, and you're going to start putting digital assets and maybe housing on there, right?
Yeah,
Okay, so have you gotten any interest from hedge funds or anything like that where we're going, hey, this guy has a pretty neat blockchain, it's not ICO tainted, right? And then you're going to be able to trade digital assets your token trades at a reasonably low price, right? So have you gotten any inquiries from institutional investors about these themes?
So no, and then also I really haven't been out there seeking that. I figure it's one of those things, when the time's ready, we'll get it out there publicly in an open source way. But no, it's something we really haven't been pursuing or going after in any way at this point. So we've always kind of had this notion and this mantra, it's better to under-promise and over-deliver and actually deliver some working technology than to go out there with some fancy white paper and graphics and then not even deliver what you're trying to do. So.
Can you talk a little bit about the 5 algorithms and kind of the benefits and maybe a little bit more how it works as well?
Yeah, so every algorithm has its own independent difficulty. And just a quick explanation, I know difficulty can get kind of complicated, but in the case of Bitcoin, every 2016 blocks, the network readjusts how hard it is to basically win the lottery of the mining reward, right? Well, the problem with that is it takes 2016 blocks or 2 weeks, and that's in theory when everything's working as it should be. Now, what we encountered in 2014 is when multi-pools would attack and they would go from Dogecoin to DigiByte to Litecoin, we would see 15, 20-fold increases and decreases in net hash rate. And what that would mean is when all this hash rate came on the network, you would have all these blocks coming every few seconds, sometimes every milliseconds. Like I saw it with Dogecoin, somebody mined like 500 blocks in 2 minutes, right? It was kind of crazy. Well, as soon as that difficulty catches up, then it freezes when the hash rate disappears because there's not enough computing power to solve this problem, right? Well, that's exactly what happened when the Bitcoin Cash fork happened. At the time of the fork, there was only about 10% of the network was actually mining Bitcoin Cash. The other 90% was still on Bitcoin. I was on Twitter and social media. I'm like, I don't know what everybody's waiting for. It's going to be hours and days and weeks before this thing stabilizes. So the problem, if what happened to Dogecoin, DigiByte, and a few others happens to Bitcoin, you'll see the Bitcoin blockchain freeze for months. So this is something we solved. It's a very serious problem. I've been trying to raise awareness for a long time, but this is the reason why everything from Zcash to Ethereum to a lot of these other projects have actually implemented what we did. So that difficulty adjustment happens independently every block per algo. So it's probably the most complicated code I've ever seen. I actually didn't write it. It was a brilliant gentleman. I think he's a mathematician, but it's real time, so every algo, every 1 minute and 30 seconds, there's a new block. Now, the cool part about having multi-algo is if you just had a single algorithm and it was every 15 seconds, you actually start running up against the latency of the entire internet. So if you're mining in South Africa and you're mining in Canada, one potential miner actually begins to have an advantage because of the latency and the relay of the network. So with 5 algos, you extend that to 1 minute 30 seconds per algo. So you actually can mitigate that quite a bit. One of the other cool things we're actually exploring, which is why I actually kind of admire Decred, is we're like, what if we have this, new algorithm system plus one of the 5 algos actually goes to proof of stake. We get the best of all worlds. So that's another thing we're actually looking into. But once again, that takes a lot of testing. I know this video is going to be recorded and I'm probably going to be coded on this. So just to clarify, it's not something you just roll out overnight, right? It takes time. Takes energy. You got to make sure you do it right. You don't want to mess the system up. Any other questions? Yes, sir. So the reality is I actually, in the beginning, it's like, okay, it's great for international remittance and payments right now. People have been using it for years for this, right? A lot of people use it for arbitrage between exchanges because you can move it in a couple of minutes from exchange to exchange to exchange, right? But I really am hesitant to ever really, market it or advertise or get up here and tell you to be used as a currency because it has way more value as something that can be used and leveraged for securing all sorts of digital information and digital data, representing digital assets. So because of the volatility in day-to-day transactions, and it's been volatile for 4 or 5 years now, everything has. That's why you're seeing this movement for stablecoins. For everyday currency use, I really don't want to answer that because I really have no idea how it's going to turn out. Because to me, the broader use cases are in cybersecurity and securing all sorts of different platforms and applications. Which one? Well, there's several. So we're on 80 plus exchanges, few dozen wallets at this point. There's one that's used to secure cryptographic identity. One of the things that's actually been really good is there's some companies out of Europe that are actually using what we call DigiID, which is one of those things I was talking about from an architecture standpoint, where you can use a blockchain for way more things than just sending payments, to where you can actually authenticate. Imagine being able to basically use your wallet to unlock everything from your house to any website and actually secure your own data. I mean, imagine being able to use your wallet to secure your healthcare records where nobody else could see it unless you authorize it for somebody else. So I don't know if that's the app you're referring to. One of the things, if it's just specifically the actual crypto wallet, like the iOS or Android wallet, yeah, you can send payments, anywhere in the world in a matter of seconds. And we already have DigiID tied in with that. We actually have some server providers that actually allow people to use their mobile wallet in Europe to actually log into their account. So it's kind of a new kind of paradigm shift in some of the very cool stuff you can do with the blockchain that people really haven't been focused on. So, and some of this stuff's been worked on for 3 or 4 years now. It's just kind of been drowned out by, especially recently with the ICO craze. So, yeah. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Oh, 2039? So basically what happens is every computer is going to revert to, January 1, 1969? Because it resets. It runs out of bits and integers. So there's some different proposals, but I don't think it's been completely standardized yet. But it's basically the timekeeping mechanism that's used for the timestamp of blocks. So I'm hoping it's solved by then. But yeah, any other questions? Yeah. I don't want to give a confirmed date yet. I can tell you we're halfway into it, like 120 pages. Obviously, got to finish it off. I mean, we got it all outlined. We got all this stuff. We're going to cover a lot of topics, right? We're going to give a little summary on each individual project, talk about how AI, IoT, architecture, how you can more efficiently use a blockchain, why the internet kind of needs to be re-architected. Talking about, quite a few things. So, yes, sir. So yeah, we'll be rolling some stuff. We're actually talking about it this week. We'll be on Twitter, so at Jared C. Tate. You can follow me there. I'll probably be doing some too. Yeah, we're going to be getting an Audible version. I'm a huge Audible fan, so yeah. Yeah, well, so like one of the first ones I was a part of, which actually, the whole IBM MERS thing was shipping. I think they watched a lot of my presentations in 2015, 16. So that's something we actually did. It's actually working. The ID, digital identity, that's a really cool piece. It's kind of, once it starts trickling into that realm of securing different things, like I said, it goes back to that original analogy. If all the DNA is just in your fingertip, you got a problem. Well, that's how the internet works. You take any major service. There's this website out there called informationisbeautiful.net, right? And it has this live infographic of all the data breaches and all these centralized points of failure. And it's pretty cool when you see it, but we can fix that. Like the solution's here, we just need to apply it in a way. And so, and that's why, one of the reasons we're doing the book is to try and help educate people that there's way more than just finance. Because, I'm sure some of you watched the recent Senate testimony. Well, the entire thing was just focused on money, finance. And it's completely missing, the fact, like to me, blockchain is 50, 60 years of advancement in cryptography. And it's just that point is being missed by so many people, especially, regulators. So, any more questions? Right, and the beautiful thing about blockchain is it's the best testing ground. Yeah. Right. No, I'm always open for stuff like that. So, yeah.
So you sound like you have a great coin. I certainly want to learn a lot more about it. But can you talk for just a second about Lightning Network, colored coins, like some of the innovations that some of the other coins are doing that are really interesting to you?
Yeah. So, this goes back into how do you scale a blockchain indefinitely, right? And Lightning Network, colored coins, these were invented for a reason, and that reason was the Bitcoin blockchain was full, right? How do you scale it? So one of the things I've always advocated is people want to have their own private chains, do whatever they want. That's great. Just anchor it, like Factom does, and do a public chain. That works. It's secure. So Lightning Network. Yeah, I mean, there's some interesting research going on there. I'm not going to say I'm anti. I mean, technically, you could do it on DigiByte just as easy. Colored Coins has been under development for quite some time now, 4 years. They've done a lot of interesting stuff. We're actually taking some of the stuff they did and integrating it with us, and we're actually modifying it and kind of improving on it. But any sort of secondary layer that scales out, I think is the future. I mean, we're heading towards a future where you're going to have multiple blockchains. They're going to talk to each other. They're going to be able to transfer data back and forth. And, it's going to be this kind of interoperable, kind of mess, but kind of a chaotic, beautiful mess. Just like nature. Like I said, go back to the nature analogy. Next time you're looking around you, just look at plants, trees, life. It'd be like, wow, this is kind of like what's happening in the blockchain world. So, any other questions? I think I'm over time. Anybody has any other questions? Yeah.
Go to the microphone for a nature analogy, unless you're talking the bumblebee's butt.
Are you anticipating a scripting language to go along with the Digi assets, or is that another abstract?
Well, be libraries. So, depending on the language, we're going to try and make it as easy as possible. I mean, that's one of the things where I really have to compliment what Ethereum has done. Is it's well documented, it's easy to do, and that's why, you have this. But at the same time, we're trying to do things a little bit more rigidly. And what I mean rigidly is, we're actually, talking in the community about ways we can make sure we prevent, scams and fraud and stuff like that popping up. So there's been some unique suggestions. So if you want to get involved with those discussions, they're actually literally just out in the open. Everybody's kind of on Telegram. So if you go to the digibyte.io, you can actually see the community link. There's a developer chat with like 1,600 people in it. Our main chat has like 20,000. So there's a lot of stuff. Yeah, any other questions? Oh, okay, well, cool. Thank you, everyone. Yeah.